This week at the movies, summer blockbuster season begins.
Robert Downey Jr. faces off with Mickey Rourke's Whiplash in Iron Man 2.
I hope you're ready.
Come on! Also coming up this week,
4 infants, 4 different countries, the first year of their lives. What kind of an evil film critic could resist the documentary Babies? Stay tuned to find out.
more babies, this time in a drama. Annette Bening, Naomi Watts, and Kerry Washington struggle with paternity in Mother and Child.
You don't know who I am or what I want.
Plus, we make our picks for our favorite performances from the star of Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr.
Our priority here is to have you turn over the Iron Man weapon to the American people.
Well, you can forget it.
We're safe. America is secure. You want my property? You can't have it. But I did you a big favor.
I have successfully privatized world peace.
Tony Stark's got a brand new suit of armor. Will the sequel to Iron Man make enough to pay for it? I'm Michael Phillips of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm A.O. Scott of the New York Times.
2 years ago, Robert Downey Jr., already a quick-witted and constantly surprising actor, became a superhero and a bona fide superstar thanks to Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau. Very good time, that film. You knew a sequel was coming, and it's here, and it's not bad. The fresh meat in Iron Man 2 is Mickey Rourke as a Russian with a family grudge against Downey Jr.'s billionaire weapons manufacturer. In this scene, all suited up as Whiplash, Rourke interrupts the Grand Prix at Monaco to settle an old score. This is a crowded movie. Stark's also dealing with a Senate hearing, a rival industrialist played by Sam Rockwell, as well as an ambitious employee who's full of deadly moves.
She is potentially a very expensive sexual harassment lawsuit if you keep ogling her like that. Yes, and I've got 3 excellent potential candidates. They're lined up and ready to meet you.
I don't have time to meet. I need someone now. I feel like it's her.
No, it's not.
You ever boxed before?
I have, yes.
Like Thai Bo, Booty Boot Camp, Crunch, something like that?
That's Scarlett Johansson in the ring with director Favreau. Favreau also plays a supporting role as Stark's flunky. Also returning from the first film is Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, now the CEO of Stark Industries.
I know. My editor will kill me if I don't grab a quote for our Powerful Women issue.
Oh.
Can I?
Sure.
She's actually doing a big spread on me for Vanity Fair. I thought I'd throw her a bone, you know.
Right.
Yes.
Well, she did quite a spread on Tony last year.
And she wrote a story as well.
Don Cheadle steps into the role of Rhodey, and Favreau's loose, casual way with his actors more or less saves this movie from its own saggy midsection and meandering plotline. Here and there, the spark and wit of the first film returns. Elsewhere, Iron Man 2 settles for being a moderately satisfying sequel, destined from the blueprint and the prototype stages for the designation of rented. I was a little frustrated by it, but not bad.
I mean, I agree with some of the things you say about it being overcrowded and about the plotting and the action sequences not being the best thing in the movie, but I say see it because this is one of the very few superhero movies I can think of that made me laugh almost from start to finish. I mean, the level of comedy, of both comic writing and comic playing in this movie is remarkably high. And I especially don't like, I'm getting more and more impatient with the heavy, lugubrious, self-important, serious superhero movie. And this one is so playful and fun and jokey.
Right, but we should point out that the screenwriter, Justin Theroux, was one of the writers on Tropic Thunder, and he's a very good actor in his own right, and he is witty, and I think this movie, it sort of comes alive and fits and starts mostly in these little verbal flourishes, things like that, but I gotta say, I think the storyline, it just is so meandering and kind of chaotic and a little confusing, and I never had that feeling in the first picture.
Oh, I agree. I was confused, and there's a lot of setting up the next sequel. There are things, the appearance of Samuel Jackson, the whole, you know, who the Scarlett Johansson character is and what she's about, that isn't going to pay off until 2 or 3 movies from now.
Right.
And that's frustrating, but I have to say there's just such liveliness, and there's some really good acting. There's this really kind of amazing scene, for example, between Downey and Mickey Rourke, the 2, you know, phoenixes risen from the ashes of ruined
That is
careers,
a good scene.
facing off in a prison cell.
Speaking of thieves, where did you get this design?
My father, Anton Uncle.
Well, I never heard of him.
My father is the reason you're alive.
The reason I'm alive is because you had a shot, you took it, you missed.
Did I?
Let me tell you why I think that works. There's no sense of facetiousness at all. I think Rourke, who doesn't have that many lines in this picture, although it's a big role, you know, it's just a couple of lines here and there, but he plays it very, very much for keeps. And what I got a little weary of, Tony, in Iron Man 2, is this whole plot line about Tony Stark becoming an insufferable celebrity butthead. And I just feel like too many comic book films go that route. Spider-Man 3 went that route.
No, but I think that Downey brings it. We're going to talk about Downey later in the show because he's had such an amazing career. But I think that he really makes it happen. And, you know, it's just, it's funny. What can I say?
It's funny.
It made me laugh.
The first one I really loved. Really loved.
All right. Coming up next, a new documentary reveals the shocking truth about babies. They're adorable.
And sometimes they turn your life into a big fat heap, as Annette Bening and Naomi Watts find out in the new drama, Mother and Child.
Our next movie is Babies, a documentary about, well, babies. 4 in particular, 1 in Tokyo, 1 in San Francisco, 1 on the steppes of Mongolia, and 1 in rural Namibia. In this no-holds-barred action scene, the American baby, Hallie, eats a banana. And here's some dialogue no screenwriter could ever come up with, courtesy of Bayar, who lives in a yurt.
Mama. Mama. Mama.
There's no story to speak of in this movie, no voiceover narration or talking head experts explaining the nuances of infant behavior, just a sprightly musical score and a mostly stationary camera recording everyday moments in the first year of these kids' lives. That's Ponejao in Namibia nodding off. And I guess there are some people who might have a similar reaction to this movie. But I have to say, I was riveted and completely charmed by Babies. The director, a French documentarian named Thomas Balmez, combines found slapstick with a subtle, almost zen-like sense of the patterns that make childhood a universal condition, even as it varies dramatically across different cultures. Babies are irresistible, and so is Babies. I say see it.
No, I say rent it.
Rent Babies?
Yes. I like
the kind of a sick man rents a baby.
I like the concept of if they get a little fussy, you just take them back and you're done with it. No, I enjoyed it for a half hour, and then I started to wonder.
Got a short attention span.
No, I was a little cranky. I had to have my nap. It just felt like by the 60, 70-minute point, is this really all there is? It's like what? It's not a movie. It's a Facebook page, and it's
no. And the faces are so cute.
They're
anyway.
cute. Yes, that's why it's a rent it.
But actually, I say seriously. I mean, I think it does subtly draw out some of what it's like, not just to, look at babies and coo over them, but actually to be one. Like how these babies struggle with the physical world, the laws of gravity, siblings, parents, animals, and I think that it is a portrait of development, of human beings in development.
There's something in it. The only thing I really got out of it, and it's the only thing they want you to get out of it, I think, is the idea that Westerners are wildly overscheduling and overbooking and just basically overcomplicating their kids' lives, as opposed to the Mongolians and the Africans.
Right, who sort of let the kids develop on their own.
And I appreciated that. I just feel like, if you plot it on a graph, it's like 30 minutes great, 75 minutes not enough. So.
Oh, I want to see the 3-hour director's cut.
That's going to be an excellent director's commentary. I can just say, oh, le bébé, très bon, très bon. Our next film, I don't want to make fun of the French, our next film, Mother and Child, interlocks 3 stories of parents and children searching for connection in modern-day Los Angeles. In writer-director Rodrigo Garcia's prologue, 2 teenagers lose their virginity, the girl gets pregnant, puts the baby up for adoption, and decades later, that girl has turned into the physical therapist played by Annette Bening.
I'm not a weirdo, but I'm difficult, okay? I don't make friends easily. I demand a lot from others.
Right.
We could meet up Saturday night if you want.
That's Jimmy Smits as Benning's fellow hospital worker. Naomi Watts plays the daughter Benning gave up for adoption. She's become a formidable attorney with a cruel streak in her adulthood, and here she's asked by her new employer and lover, played by Samuel L. Jackson, about her birth mother's whereabouts.
I live in her hometown. How hard can it be for Her Majesty to find me? It's better this way. We're all better off like this. Why do you ask?
I thought she'd be very pleased with who you are.
Another adoption story serves as the third piece of Garcia's film, and in this scene, Kerry Washington and David Ramsey play prospective parents being interviewed by a young Sharika Epps.
Do you believe in God? But I'm not a very religious person, but Joseph is, aren't you? You don't believe that a higher being created you and loves you and looks after you? No.
Tough customer there. There are moments in Mother and Child where you sense a writer working out the intersection points of his storylines a little too carefully. But this movie's calm, steady control keeps a wide variety of good actors in the same universe. For the female leads especially, I say it's worth seeing. Yeah,
I also say it's worth seeing. I think for the same reasons that you do. I think that the acting is wonderful in this movie. Kerry Washington, Naomi Watts, who we haven't seen that much of lately.
Well, and Benning is not doing much.
And Benning is, yeah, and she's fantastic. I do think this is one of those movies like Babel or Crash where you have these stories that are kind of lined up in parallel, and the payoff is their kind of serendipitous convergence. And I don't usually like. I'm sort of tired of that narrative strategy, but I do think that Garcia lets it breathe enough, lets you get a sense of these characters' real, actual lives and emotions.
Much more so than those two films you mentioned. Yeah. And those feel very overdetermined and sort of self-conscious, and in a way, I just felt like the actors are always fighting for attention in some of those ensemble pictures.
And this one's much more relaxed.
Yeah,
they have room to breathe, and they do some very nice work. Coming up next, Michael Douglas is a businessman on a downward spiral in Solitary Man.
At your lowest moments, you're alone.
Next week, it's Robin Hood, starring Russell Crowe and Cate Blanchett.
I declare him to be an outlaw!
Plus, Amanda Seyfried in Letters to Juliet.
And Queen Latifah in Just Right.
Next week at the movies.
Don't call me Dad, and you don't call me Grandpa. She's checking me out. Hey, give me a hug. Maybe she'll think we're married.
Yuck, Dad.
We can pretty much guarantee that you haven't made plans to see any of the next three movies. They're flying a little under the radar, but all of them are worth seeking out. You just saw a scene from Solitary Man starring Michael Douglas as a disgraced businessman making some rather bad choices, we can say.
So I mean, the plot line is that he's taking his girlfriend's daughter, who's 17, 18, up to college for the first time. This is his alma mater, and it's basically kind of a midlife crisis, although he's about 60 years old.
And it's a big crisis.
Yeah. And what I like about this movie, Tony, I do like it, is it really does sort of push the limit about how unsympathetic can a character like this be and still kind of retain the audience's interest and sympathy. But I think the key is it is truly witty in the writing, and every character in it is smart. That's what I like.
No, he's smart and has a mixture of self-delusion and insight. So this, and I think Michael Douglas is terrific in this movie. He's playing a character who makes Gordon Gekko look like Gandhi, maybe. But he doesn't in a way overdo this. It's a very honest portrayal of who this guy is and how he thinks of himself, and everyone around him. Imogen Pooh, the young actress,
and Jesse Eisenberg, who I think has never hit a false note in his entire life.
A lot of people show up in this movie. It's a good movie.
Good film. Also in theaters and on demand now is No One Knows About Persian Cats from Iran. Now this, I think, the closest equivalent I can come up with on this, because this is a title that people are just like, what? No one knows.
There are no cats in the movie.
There are no cats. It's close in spirit to the Irish film Once, which was also about, sort of young musicians trying to find their way in the world. And here we have the underground music scene in Tehran. It comes to life in all these different, sort of clandestine studio scenes.
It's not a documentary, but it's characters basically playing themselves and acting out the story of these young people who are trying to form a band and get a gig and find recording studios and other musicians. The kind of thing you could imagine happening in LA or London or Brooklyn, except that they're in Iran, which means that they're at risk of going to jail and getting arrested.
And the movie was made in the same spirit, right? Because I mean, the movie could have been shut down by the authorities at any point. And it's well worth seeing.
It's well worth seeing. It's just a great kind of rebellious rock and roll spirit. And another movie worth checking out in limited release is Casino Jack and the United States of Money.
Okay, audiences may remember the disgraced D.C. lobbyist Jack Abramoff, right?
Yes.
And this is only a few years ago when people were kind of preoccupied with this, and he was really in the news as kind of a symbol of everything wrong with influence peddling in Washington, either side of the aisle.
He was the #1 lobbyist in Washington. who can get you in touch with the best and most influential members of Congress.
It's amazing how many members of Congress want it in with Jack.
People have forgotten about this.
One in particular in this movie.
Yeah, one in particular, but truly this is a kind of a non-political issue, this idea of like to what degree lobbyists are kind of running the show and pulling the strings in Washington. This documentary, I think, takes on a little too much in explaining everything they don't like about the way the system's working, but when it focuses on Abramoff's rise and fall, it really is compelling.
And it has some great stuff. I mean, the director, Alex Gibney, has dug into the archives and found some amazing old footage. And some of the stuff about the way that Abramoff and his associates were ripping off Indian tribes and playing them off against each other. I mean, it's like something from Elmore Leonard or Carl Hiaasen.
Right.
I mean, it's great stuff. It's very entertaining, as well as
tragically true.
Yes. And coming up next, from Less Than Zero to Chaplin to Iron Man, he's had a very diverse career. And we'll take a look back at the work of Robert Downey Jr.
Well, there isn't any time to waste then, is there?
We're tired of being the trail donkeys, acting like you some one-man GPS. Damn it! We lost. We super lost, man. Tell them, McCluskey. Tell them what time it is.
I don't believe you people.
Huh? What do you mean, you people?
What do you mean, you people?
Huh?
That's dedication, and that was a scene from Tropic Thunder, starring Robert Downey Jr.
Is there any other actor you can think of who could pull that off? Who could play an Australian method actor, serious movie star, playing an African American soldier? I can't even get my head around it.
It proves that comedy is nothing without risk. Nothing without risk. Yeah. No, a fascinating career. Robert Downey Jr. at the beginning of his career, like so many other people, people like John Cusack, others, they have to kind of deal with these anonymous, sort of colorless roles when they're young. In the case of Robert Downey Jr., you're talking about films like Weird Science, Back to School, Rodney Dangerfield, and he's just trying to kind of find what he can in supporting roles.
Less Than Zero. I mean, he was a sort of...
That was the change, though.
Well,
that was the change.
But he was a kind of satellite member of the Brad Pack. And Less Than Zero is not a particularly memorable movie, although it is a period piece. But there's something there. You look at this guy and you say, he's thinking and acting on a level and with a kind of caginess and wit and risk-taking.
Yeah, and there's a lot
these other people aren't.
Like some of our best actors, and I think actually the late Heath Ledger would fall into this category. There's a sense of being fully inside the skin of a kind of a troubled character, and yet you're slightly outside of it, commenting, but without being blasé about it or disengaged. But it's sort of like two things going on at once with the performance. He's very clever, even when he was young.
But what's fascinating is that more recently, he's as you were saying earlier in the show, he's become this huge movie star. I mean, who's in these big franchise entertainments. He's got two of them going. He's got the Iron Man series and also Sherlock Holmes, which I know you particularly didn't like.
No, it did not. But Downey Jr. is very good in it, and it's like he was doing in as far back as Richard Attenborough's Chaplin, a very good and thoroughly worked out performance in a movie you can take or leave, in my view. But I think it's a film, really, Tony, like Zodiac, where Downey Jr. really proves that he can be kind of a peacock and a strutter, but also enter a world where really ensemble playing is more the rule. And Iron Man 2, that calls for a different sort of movie star bravura.
But he never lets go of the sense that this guy is smart. Whoever he's playing, that there's intelligence, there's wit, and there's unpredictability. I think that's a key thing. Is like, you're looking at this guy, and you don't, whatever character he's playing in whatever movie, you're not quite sure, and you're not quite sure he's sure what he's going to do next.
And if he works with Guy Ritchie one more time after Sherlock 2, then he's going to lose all spontaneity, and he'll be, but I hope he hangs on to it. He's very good. Coming up next, can't decide what to see in theaters? Stay tuned for My 3 to See.
Hotel provided by Park Hyatt Chicago, Chicago's award-winning hotel and luxury dining experience, located in the heart of Chicago's Magnificent Mile on Water Tower Square.
My 3 to See this week contains one big hit, and while I say it's worth renting, it's not Iron Man 2. Number 3, no one knows about Persian Cats. It's a movie for anyone who liked the feel and the atmosphere of the Irish film Once. This one is set in Tehran, where singing and playing in the underground scene means risking everything for music. Number 2, Mother and Child. If you find the multi-pronged storylines of films like Crash or Babel to your taste, you'll likely be very intrigued by this drama. I happen to like this film better than either of those two. And number one, plenty of big movies have opened since this one came along, but for me, the hit to beat remains How to Train Your Dragon, especially, Tony, in 3D.
Yeah,
Good. Yeah.
That's it for now. We'll leave you with a recap of this week's show. Now you can join the discussion by following us on Facebook and Twitter. Just go to atthemoviestv.com to find out how.
And join us next week for reviews of Robin Hood with Russell Crowe and Letters to Juliet with Amanda Seyfried. And until then, we'll be at the movies.